we start off by talking about these specific types of offenses that we want to look to adolescents, right, for committing. And if it's a status offense, right, a status offense, status, tomato, right, then that's something that a child, an adolescent, may be punished for, but maybe an adult wouldn't be punished for these types of things. So there's some major status offenses that you need to understand and know so that you understand how we're going to be focusing on criminalizing or punishing or rehabilitating or addressing what is going on with our youth. The first, truancy. Who knows what that is? You ever heard of that? Yeah. Raise your hand if you did that before. Right. So this is a problem, and do you think it's a bad thing? Were you raised in a culture, were you raised in a community where truancy was acceptable and where people did it all the time, and where there wasn't that strong value system to show you, hey, look, if you go to school every day, that might teach you to go to work every day. How many people here have decided not to go to work because you have a headache? I'm not going to go today. I'm going to call off. Well, sometimes some of the things that we learn as children, right, those things translate into adult behavior. So it's very important that we address some of these issues with our children, you understand, and teach them this culture of proper social order. How do you follow rules and regulations? How do you prepare yourself to be successful? Well, if you're not going, if you're not showing up, that's a problem. It's a problem in our society. So if a child does not attend school often, then we can call the police on mom and dad. You with me on that? We can call the cops on mom and dad. Mom and dad can get in trouble, and that child can be placed somewhere where they're going to follow the rules and regulations and make sure that they're doing what they need. But if you're in a community where truancy is common, and there are other issues, deeper issues, more rich things going on, then maybe people don't take the time to make that phone call. Or maybe they just get some type of, the automated call. Your child skipped school today. Press 1, Press 1 if you don't care, and so, we see these types of things happening in society. Depending on the community that you're in, that's going to determine how the punishment is going to be applied. So if you go to a community where people maybe make a little bit more money, where there's a higher expectation for that child to stay in school, because that's what we do. We class people. You all understand that, right? Mm-hmm. We place people into boxes and groups, and then our expectations are applied, right? Then maybe they would be more likely to punish someone for not actively participating. I'm going to punish you if you don't show up to this class the way you're supposed to. Why? Because I'm trying to teach you that showing up is important. If you don't show up, then you don't get the goodies. Don't you all want the goodies? You want the goods, right? You can't get anything in life if you're not present. You have to be present. And that's what we're talking about with the kids. Running away. Running away is another status offense. Sometimes when things get heavy, don't you all run sometimes? Don't you run away? You can run away by sleeping. You can run away by shutting yourself out and not paying attention, right? But some people learn to run away at a really early age. And they run away physically. They're trying to move themselves or remove themselves from a setting or from a situation that is unhealthy or uncomfortable. Well, we like to have programs for children who run away because we want them to be in a stable situation. We want to help them. We want to help them recover from whatever it is that's going on. And we want to give them some place that they can be where they feel like they don't have to run. They don't have to go away. Isn't that what you want to do in your life? Don't you want to create a positive situation for yourself, a healthy situation for yourself where you don't feel like there's a need for you to escape? Well, that's what we want to do for our children as well. But it is a huge problem with regards to juvenile delinquency, with regards to young girls running away. And boy, when you run away, it's not always a safe situation, right? It's scary out there. And these babies, they don't know anything different. They don't know. All they know is that I need to get out of here. I see this situation here, and I need to get out. And there are lots of reasons why people run away, right? They may run away because they're being beaten, abused, sexually, physically, emotionally. Is physical abuse worse than emotional abuse? Raise your hand if you think physical abuse is worse than emotional abuse. Raise your hand right now if you think physical is worse than emotional. Let's see where we are in here. Yeah, I like where we are. All right. So there is no real answer, right? Physical abuse, hitting, touching, pushing, harming, taking your finger and putting it in somebody's crack area, right? This is the type of class that this is. You all understand that, right? So, this is what you're going to get. You're going to get the real deal. But this is what's happening to our babies, right? Not just babies that are menstruating. You know what that is, right? I'm not doing that. I'm not going through that. But I'm talking about 2-year-olds. I'm talking about, we have an issue in the United States where folks are kidnapping 5, 6, and 7-year-olds and selling them for sex and then sewing up their vaginas and reselling them as virgins. So running away. We have a runaway issue for many different reasons. Some people run away because they're verbally abused. Do you all know the difference between emotional abuse and verbal abuse? Is there a difference? No, it's not. Abuse is not abuse. Physical abuse is physical abuse. Emotional abuse is emotional abuse. Verbal abuse is verbal abuse. Don't you know that I don't have to say anything to you to abuse you? You know that, right? I can use nonverbal communication to abuse you, to make you feel like you're nothing, to make you feel like you're less than, to make you feel like you don't fit in, to make you feel like you're worthless. I don't have to say anything. I can mistreat you, right? I can not include you on things, right? I can dress you like you're nothing and make you feel like you don't fit in, make you feel worthless. Emotional abuse doesn't have to be verbal abuse. You got to know that. They're different. They're all different. And people run away for some of those reasons. Right? That makes sense. So, ungovernability. You're going to do what you want to do. Okay? You're not listening to mama. You're not listening to the social worker. You're going to do what you want to do. So, I'm telling you now, here is the solution for this particular problem. Here's the punishment that you're going to have. Go in timeout. That's this mess now. 2014, timeout. Go over there in timeout. No. You go in timeout. This is a 4-year-old. No. I don't want to go in timeout. You go in timeout. You go sit in the corner. You put this silly hat on in the corner. What do? What do you do? Tell me what you do to the 4-year-old who tells you to go in timeout. Come on. Yes.
Remove the child's privileges. TV, everything, friends, all the day.
So you can take away their privileges. What else? You tell me what you're going to do.
I'm old school, so I'm not going to go there.
I thought he was going to say, my pants have elastic, so I don't have on a belt today. But there are studies with regards to juvenile aggression, youth aggression, that say that children who are spanked or beaten, that's the way they solve problems. So you want to solve a problem with them by pulling off your belt? Then if they have an issue with somebody else, how are they going to solve that problem? Let me go get my belt.
Well, see, that's what they say. And I have grown children and grandchildren. And all my grown children kind of thanked me for spanking them when they were younger. And they're all very successful, college grads, master's degrees and all that, because I just didn't spank them and say, that's that. I spanked them, let them know why, and I loved on them too. All in that same setting. So
And
I know it's a big argument.
it's not a big argument because there's a side to everything.
Yeah.
I'm not telling you not to spank children. I'm just telling you about studies.
And I've seen the studies that say, you know, if you spank, that particular child learn that that's the way you solve problems. So they've inadvertently start spanking their children, thinking they're spanking their, hitting the boyfriend, so on and so forth. And I said, some, not all.
Mm-hmm. And so the flip side of that, you will get a chance to talk again. The flip side of that is that there are also studies that say that people enact spankings as a form of spirituality, or, you know, in connection with religious beliefs, and they connect, you know, what you do right and what you do wrong to that spanking. And it's not necessarily about being hit, it's about how you feel bad about what you did after you're being spanked, you know. But some children can't make that connection.
And that's true.
You know, and so that's the big deal. The big deal is that there are ways that we discipline, but every single child is different.
Right.
Just like every single person in here is different. So that's how our juvenile justice system has worked for a long time, you understand. Things have changed over the years with regards to how you punish children, because there's a critical understanding that every child is different. So every child's going to handle their problems differently, and there's a different solution with regards to how you deal with their behavior for every single child. Even if you have 3 children at home, there may be a different disciplinary style that works effectively for each of those children. And you have to think about it, and you have to figure it out. And that's what makes dealing with juvenile delinquency so challenging. Because you would think that we would deal with things the same way with adults, but the main goal with juveniles has been to rehabilitate them, to help them to understand that they shouldn't do this again. Whereas with adults, a lot of times we're slapping your hand. You fool, you should know better. So you're doing whatever you're doing, and you should have learned years ago that that's not how you're supposed to behave. So now you're 21 years old. You're an adult. Or you're 18 years old, and you're an adult. And you're going to be treated accordingly, right? But with kids, it's a little different. And some parents don't know that, you see? So parents in this room, those of you who are going to be parents in this room, aunties, uncles, grandmas, listen to what I just said. Every kid is not going to respond properly or the way you think they're going to respond if you want to use spankings. And every kid is not going to respond effectively to doggone timeout. But you have to think critically about those personalities, right? About those children, and think about how you need to address dealing with them. And that's what we need to learn for those of you who are going to go into juvenile justice system. That it's a strong element of discretion. And you have to think critically about who they are and how we need to interact with them. Violating curfew. You got to be in the house by a certain time. The reason why you have a curfew is because you did something wrong, probably. Or you live in a community where people do wrong things. So sometimes we're trying to protect children from the elements around them. So we have a curfew in place to protect them from things that we can't control. So sometimes there are rules and regulations that exist in the workplace for you all, right? Those rules and regulations may not exist because people think you're horrible, but they may exist because people around you may make bad choices on a regular basis. So you have to understand why something exists. That's what you have to start thinking critically about. When you talk about laws, when you talk about rules and regulations, why does this rule or regulation exist? And not take it personal all the time. Because it may not exist as an attack on you, but it may be something that's set in place to make the environment work a little bit more effectively. Who drank before they were 21? What'd you drink? Talk to me. What'd you drink?
Liquor.
What is that? What was your favorite? Jack Daniels is your favorite. What does that taste like? Anybody know what that tastes like? He said, Jack Daniels. 12 years old. Where's my Jack Daniels? 15? Okay. Anybody in here? Just throw it. Nobody's going to tell anybody. It's just on the recording. I didn't realize it was on the recording. Nobody's going to know. Just everybody who takes this class. Anyway.
You're not the only one.
Yeah. No. I mean, okay, for the record, 75% of the hands went up in this class. Is the question whether you get busted or not? Is it whether you do it at home with your parents or whether your parents know that you're doing it? Is it what you drink? Because, drinks are a class. There's a different class, Did you have a little taste of wine at the dinner table with mom and dad? Because, they were just trying to let you participate in the culture of the family because a little glass of wine is only going to thin your blood. It's not going to hurt you. Did you have that? Or, was it in a paper bag? Did you drink something in the paper bag on the porch with Uncle Ray Ray? Here we go with Ray Ray again, right? Uncle Ray Ray will get you drunk. Do you comprehend the status offense information? You get it? Yeah. Next. Knowledge. You tell me what juvenile delinquency is. What do you think juvenile delinquency is? Don't just shout everything out at one time.
Kids getting caught by the police.
Kids getting caught by the police for what? Build a block. Mm-hmm.
Crimes.
For committing crimes for... Keep going. Whatever. Yeah, give it to me. I'm here.
Anything that you not to be taken into custody for and you did delinquent.
Okay. Give me more.
Juveniles going down the wrong path.
Down the wrong path. Well, what's
leading to trouble?
Leading to trouble. So you see someone as a problem child, and you label them.
It could be a child that's at risk.
At risk, right? What is at risk? What does that mean? At risk.
In my mind, at risk, a high risk, at risk, meaning in a community that has a lot of crime going on, living in a household where there's violence, drugs, abuse.
Tell me more at-risk conditions. Tell me things. Tell me, what do you know? What's at risk to you? What are the problems that we see in Martinsburg? Teen pregnancy, what else?
Parents who have who are convicted.
So
You're at risk.
Right. And you know what, that's about opportunity theory. That's about social learning theory, because if you're around someone who commits crime, if you're around patterns of delinquency, when people make choices to commit crimes or to do something that is not particularly acceptable for that particular child, even a status offense, right? Then you may be at risk of trouble, damage, problems. People may look at you and they may say, well, let me assume, which means that you are... No. Just out of umi. Right, so, yeah, I don't know who that is. Just out of umi. You're not going to make a fool of me. Yes, ma'am.
To me, a juvenile delinquent is somebody who got the label by already going through the court system. You're not a delinquent until after you've been labeled that. Right, label, yeah. Okay. So there's a label somehow. Somehow. It could be because there was a problem before. It could be because you're at risk. It can be because of just assumptions about people. You could look like a delinquent.
Wow.
You could look like trouble. I see trouble, and trouble looks like you. But I'm not going to ask you what that looks like, who that person is. I'm not going to ask you who that person is. The book will tell us who a delinquent child is, because we have some ideas already based upon when we ask about at risk. We label people. And that's an issue in our juvenile justice system, right? That someone can look a certain way and be judged and be put into a box. And then they have to deal with that. Maybe they don't have the right attitude. You can have a delinquent attitude, can't you? Don't you all just love those attitudes? Permanent lemon, right? I can't produce that. Just all lemon faced up. So, right. Adolescent. What's an adolescent? When they say at our adolescent stages, you know what that is?
What's the age group?
12 to 18.
12 to 18.
And sometimes even younger, right? Sometimes when you talk about adolescent stages, you can be talking about babies too, right? When Freud talks about adolescent stages of adolescence, he's going to talk about,
Year-olds too.
babies, right? Adolescent, you're not an adult. Okay, you're not an adult. And what is critical about that is, honestly, that the definition of adolescence is so vague that when people do studies and they're talking about adolescence, right, and they don't say this age group, then we start assuming that they're talking about this group or another group. But when we're talking about your experiences as a child, right, or not as an adult, right, then we're talking about the adolescent stage. Very vague, but please understand that when you're reading the newspaper, when you're listening to the news, when you're watching television shows and they talk about adolescence, it's the same as talking about maybe middle class. Nobody knows who that is, right? Who's that? I don't know who the middle class is. It ain't Ray Ray. That's all we know. All we know. All right. And Ray Ray does not have a race in this class, just so that you know. Ray Ray does not have a race or an ethnicity. There's a Ray Ray in every family. I'm just saying. I don't want you all to think I'm talking about my cousin. Even though I do have a cousin named Ray Ray, and he is a little off. But we love him. All right. All right. Self-report surveys versus official record surveys. Let me write some stuff down for you. What time is it? That's what we get to plan. Maybe I don't want to write it down. I'm not writing it down. You write it down. All right. What we're going to talk about in this class are different ways of recording the progress of criminal delinquency, okay? And sometimes there's a study done where people go door to door to someone's house, right? And they ask them questions about life in general, okay? You got the U.S. Census, right? And you also have victimization surveys that do that as well, where the government hires folks and they go and they ask questions and folks report what's going on in their lives. That's a self-report survey. You with me? And it is very different than an official report because lots of times there are different criteria, Some self-report surveys, they only take information for, children of a certain age. Some self-report surveys are going to be biased because maybe Tracy was raped 15 times, but in her head, she was raped 75 times, Or, maybe somebody was, beaten up by a particular person and they exaggerate that experience a little bit. But if it was not reported to the police, how would you know that it happened at all? So that's the cool thing about these self-report surveys, is that you're actually learning things that nobody would know about otherwise. So when folks sit back and they look at the data reports and they say, well, the self-report surveys say that, there are 35% more women in lower income communities who are raped than what you have being reported in the official data. Well, why? Maybe they were afraid that the person was going to, beat them up or abuse them. Maybe they were in a household situation where they could not report this type of conduct, and the person going around doing the survey came at the right place, right time, The whole idea is that sometimes there are issues with trust with regards to the policing system. Sometimes there are issues with, having confidence in the policing system. Are these people going to help me? There are also issues with law, meaning that rape in particular, marital rape didn't become illegal until 1999.
Wow.
So And still, in Virginia and West Virginia, there's a 24-hour burden of proof for women who are married who are raped. So you've got 24 hours to not shower, to get down to the hospital, get some type of vagina swab test done so that they can get the semen out or whatever, and then report it to the police. And if you don't get that done in 24 hours, then it's not rape. So there's some issues, you know. There's some issues. So that's why we have these different types of studies. They say that some challenges are selective memory. Sometimes we forget details. You all know that happens, right? Mm-hmm. You know, you tell a story so many times that you only remember this part, and you selectively forget that part. You know, that's a challenge. That's an issue. Embarrassment or modesty. You know, sometimes people don't report things in official studies because it's just downright humiliating. We have huge issues with women in upper class communities and middle class communities who won't report spousal abuse or domestic violence because it is just embarrassing. It's embarrassing to their family, it's embarrassing to them, and they would rather be beaten every day than deal with the humiliation of people knowing that this person is doing that to them. That also happens in lower income communities. Our very strong women who are used to controlling the household and taking care of the family and being able to handle so much weight, well, you don't want to go and report something like that, because if you can manage all these children and all these other situations, how come you can't manage this person punching you in the face every Sunday? So, you know, all different types of communities, these different things happen. Official records. Typically, with official records, they're only going to measure certain types of crime or certain types of violence. So the self-report may give you a wide variety of different things that are happening in society, whereas the official reports are going to focus on maybe 7 or 8 different things. Like, for instance, homicide, rape, burglary, aggravated assault, larceny, motor vehicle theft, things like that. You'll find all these things in your book, I promise. I'm just trying to put your feet in the water. So very important. The problem, sometimes you have issues like tax evasion, corruption, political corruption. You have large-scale drug dealing, things that are going on that are very serious in our society that these official records can't tell us anything about. So what happens with the official records? They take a certain group of people who commit crime and they turn those people into our criminals. And then there's another set of people that we're not reporting stuff for that get away with murder. And so what we end up having is this whole issue in our society where we're aiming at certain types of criminals and we're not looking holistically at our crime problem. Something to think about. So that's just your feet in the water, right? You can get more. That's application. So what I just did is I looked at a certain type of survey and I applied certain circumstances and situations that would apply to that to help you understand, so that when you read your book and your book is talking about these different types of reports, then you can say, oh, I know what this is. I remember that we have, this type of thing going on here, and I understand that the official records are very different, and there's a different way of gathering information. So how many people think that official reports are better than the self-reports, or self-reports are better than the official reports? Do you have an opinion? Do you think one is better than the other? No. A lot of people actually do think one is better than the other. There are people who have opinions. And you can have an opinion in here. You know that, right? Last time I asked a question, nobody wanted to say anything. But you really can believe that, you'd rather rely on elite people and those people who have statistics that are structured to deliver an answer that you want to get, as opposed to going door to door and finding out what Ray and Johnny and Lita have to say about whatever it is. But the reality is that we use both. And they both are helpful for different reasons. We need different types of data collection. Sometimes we need data that comes directly from the officials and from the police, but sometimes we need to talk to people. And it hasn't always been like that in the criminal justice system. It hasn't always been the case that we want to trust people and talk to people and understand what people have to say. You all know that for a fact, right? You understand that there are periods in time, even in society, where we have an elitist focus, where we would rather deal with the person who is the expert, as opposed to paying attention to the everyday people and what they have to deliver or what they have to contribute. So depending on who's in charge, we got Republicans, do we have Democrats, right? That's going to determine what the most valid form is typically. You understand? Are we going to deal with the experts or are we going to deal with the people? It varies. And every 4 years it changes. Everybody understand that? So, usually depending on the political mass, that's going to determine how we deal with our children, how we deal with adults, how we deal with criminals. It's not consistent at all. It's never been consistent. So as you all get different jobs, the philosophies will change. The ideologies will change. The things that you learn in this class, 3 or 4 years from now, things may be different. But you understand the historical transition. You understand that we'll talk about the way things were yesterday and we'll transition into what's going on today. Just so that you understand that you got to be ready. You have to be receptive to change when you go into this particular field. You have to understand that one day people may be into rehabilitation and the next day hang them on the pole. And that's how quick it is. That's how it happens. First you want to rehabilitate the criminal, then you get the 3 strikes rule. And it happens fairly quickly. Explain how status offenders are handled. I think we did that pretty well. Do you agree? Do you need more? You get it? Your book will guide you too, because you'll read, won't you? You'll read on the Twitter. Past and present treatments. If you have your book, turn to page 12. You have it. Or share.
Census? Yeah, we can just use comprehension.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not going to be a question. Hello. What's your name? Renee. I try to remember your names. I'll be asking you, what's your name? What's your name? But I'll see the pictures, because you'll do that for me, right? You'll get the pictures. What time is it? We need to get the heck out of here. Analysis. If you look on page 12 in your book, it introduces various stages of treatment for juvenile delinquents. It starts on page 12, and then it goes to page 16, 12 to 16. But there's a really nice chart on the bottom of page 12. And it talks to you about the transition. I don't have much time to get in it. But I'll just give you an idea. Let's kind of get an idea. So you start off in the colonial period, and they're like, okay, all the parents are in charge of their kids, Parents control things. Parents set rules and regulations. We really don't want, people outside of the homes coming in and telling people how they need to raise their children. That's in, 1636 to about 1823. But then, there's a change. There's a shift. After that, you have this house of refuge era. And what pretty much happens is, at first we say we want to give all these parents this responsibility. But some parents don't know how to create an ideal home. Raise your hand if you know of somebody who doesn't know how to create an ideal home situation. Boy, don't you wish you could take those kids out and bring them into your home or put them somewhere else where they can have a sound situation. And so we started gathering in our heads with regards to our juvenile justice system, what is an ideal situation and what type of setting do you need to have in order to raise a kid properly, an adolescent properly? How do we want them to actually live? And so we started putting them in homes. And we're going to take you out of here, because this is not right. Either, you're not doing what you're supposed to do, you're ungovernable, or mom and dad aren't doing, for whatever reason, right? And we're going to find homes for you. Well, I tell you what, that's a great transition from this colonial period where if mom and dad didn't do the right thing, then you stand outside on the corner, Ray, and we're going to throw some rocks at you. Then maybe you'll act right then, or we'll hang you, right? Because there's a huge transition, between the whole idea with adult criminality. Are you going to give an adult a certain amount of time for crime that they're acting out, and is the crime going to match the time, or are you just going to punish them because you don't like what they're doing? So that works with children as well. You got to think about that as well. If our criminal justice system is not, treating, tit for tat with time, how are we treating our kids? So some kids were treated like adults. They got stoned in the street. You stand in the hole, and everybody gets around and throw rocks at you. You know any kids that may need a rocking? No? Or is that too harsh nowadays? Is that what? Well, because we have to think about these things. Should we still do the things that we did in the past? Oh, you want to talk back? Okay, let me go get these rocks. Let me go get these. I got my little bamboo plants. Let me go get these pebbles. Plant. Stand in the corner. Now you won't talk back. Throw the pebbles at them. That's not acceptable, is it? Some things that happened in the past, they aren't acceptable anymore. But some of you don't know that. Sometimes we got to move on. So you may have done something in 1980 or 1990 or in 2000. But if people are doing something new, then you need to transition, right? Okay. So you don't listen to me. Okay, so now we're moving into 1966 juvenile courts era, and during this time, that's when we start focusing on this core idea, the legal concept, parens patriae. Okay, and here we're going to intervene. We're going to intervene for the sake of the child's welfare. We are going to do things just for the children. We have the children in our best interest, okay? And so sometimes mom and dad just don't know what they're doing. They just don't, they can't get right. They can't make right choices. And when that's the case, as the government, we have to step in and we have to make changes. We have to create a different situation for them. And that's a really unique perspective to say that, because you know how you all feel. I know this is how you feel. This is 2014. This is my kid. Right? You don't tell me what to do, because teachers are afraid. They're afraid sometimes to talk to parents about things that their children are doing wrong, because parents have this attitude that, I may not have my bills paid, but I'm the boss of this kid. Right? Some people. Okay. So we transition to that, and then so on and so forth. Page 12 through 16, you read through, and you just understand that transition and how things are changing. And the interesting thing about change is that change doesn't mean that every time it's totally different. It means that we're adding things in. And I always talk about, you can't have your egg back. Those of you who've had class with me before in the past, if you make a batch of brownies, you're with me? If you make a batch of brownies and you bake them, then there's a chemical reaction. And that egg is cooked into the brownie, and you cannot have your raw egg back because it's in the brownie. So sometimes when we have changes over time with our juvenile justice system, some of the past traditions, they stay, or they become transformed in some type of way. So, you still have this idea that, you throw the rock at the kid, except you don't really throw a rock, you just take your finger and you pull it back like this, pluck them in their head, right there. Bow! I would never do that to my child. That happened to me. I'm going to talk to my mom about that. Because I just had a moment. See, it was crazy. I relived it all. Reliving moment. The UCR and the NCVS are two different types of reports. One is an official report, right? UCR, and the NCVS is a survey report. Okay, we have a video that you can watch to learn about it, and there's specific information in your text. You can go right to it. It explains and describes the differences, everything. The question comes right from your textbook.